This video, I'm going to tell you what the term data analytics means and explain 3 ways it's important to help resolving workplace disputes. Let's get started. First, analytics is the process of using raw data to find trends and answers to questions. So if you've ever read or heard any other definition other than the one I just gave, those definitions are wrong. Just kidding. There's plenty of other good definitions for data analytics in the description below. I've linked to some videos that discuss those at length, but for purposes of our video today, that one will do just fine. So I want to give you an example of data analytics. Just say that you were planning a family trip to New Zealand in 2020. Well, congratulations on your choice. I've never been there myself, but here it's great. You're going to have some logistics ahead of you for a lot of flights, hotels, activities while you're there. TripAdvisor offers you a way to answer some basic questions through other people's experiences that are recorded in opinions. So one of the ways you could answer a question, is this a good place to stay, is kind of utilizing TripAdvisor's bubble rating system. There's 2 ways to use that bubble rating system. One is to kind of bottom line it and look at the overall review summary for that hotel or activity, and it'll have an average. If you were more curious, you could read all of the reviews that are listed in the section below that summary to get an idea of the actual experiences that people had. This raw data offers a number of advantages over just having the summary. One is that if you choose to rework the system a bit, you could do that. For example, you could say, hey, I'm going to eliminate all the reviews from January and February because that is in the middle of a New Zealand summer and we're not going in the summer, and so I just want to eliminate all those. That's something that you could do. And so another way that you could potentially ignore certain data, for example, let's say you were comparing 2 airlines. One had an average rating of a 4.5 and one had an average rating of a 4.2. Without knowing anything more, you might be tempted to choose the airline that has 4.5. However, on closer inspection, you look, there's only 7 reviews for the airline with 4.5, and there's hundreds of reviews for the airline that has a 4.2 rate. You might be a little bit leery of choosing an airline based just on 7 reviews. So that's just a very elementary example of data analytics that the public has familiarity with. Now, let's go on to how data analytics is helpful to me as a litigator in defending employers. One of the ways that it's helpful is in mediation. Mediation is simply a structured settlement conference. And again, in the link below, I've got some examples that are helpful and explain what mediation is more completely. One of the advantages to mediation is that all of the decision makers are at one place, and you as a defense attorney will get to speak directly to the plaintiff face to face. And that's a great opportunity because those opportunities are rare. You can address the plaintiff and tell her or him about why you think that the case should be settled that day. An approach I may take in a case that's pending in federal court, and let's just say the plaintiff is claiming some kind of discrimination and retaliation in that case. An approach would be basically to explain to the plaintiff that it's an uphill battle litigating in federal court when you're a plaintiff, that generally speaking, employers fare better when cases are litigated to judgment. Fact is, not really disputed by anybody, but now that we have data analytics, we'll be able to show the plaintiff, and if we're able to show statistics to back up the points we're making, I think it gives decision makers the ability to make more confident decisions. We'll show you in just a minute a tool that we use. It's called Lex Machina. Lex Machina hasn't sponsored this video. It's just a tool that our firm uses and pays us subscription fee to use, and it's enormously helpful because we're able to show case resolutions in a particular district before a particular judge and a list of every single case that makes up those percentages. And then we're able to share that with our opposition and allow them to see that. They have an opportunity to settle for an amount now and avoid that risk, because if a plaintiff were to lose their case, for example, on summary judgment, the most common way for a plaintiff to lose a federal discrimination and retaliation case, that plaintiff would owe our client, the employer, their former employer, the costs. Costs in that case are limited in nature, and some, typically range somewhere in the $1,500 to $4,500 range. So it's important to let them know that if you don't settle, you could lose, and you could end up owing our client and your former employer money.
Okay, here is an example of a search on Lex Machina. As you can see up here, it's showing almost 1,700 cases. This is from the Middle District of Florida, which is one of the top 5 districts in size of employment law filings in the country. And what this shows is all employment cases that were terminated sometime after January 1st, 2015 through today, but I've eliminated from the search, as you can see from the filters over here, I've eliminated from the search cases from the Fair Labor Standards Act. Those are overtime cases, because in this example I wanted to isolate cases that have to do with intentional discrimination and retaliation. So those have been captured here, and this shows a nice visual of the outcomes. As you can see, the green shows likely settlement, 76%, or nearly 1,300 cases out of the nearly 1,700 were settled. Those that were litigated to judgment, there's only, 169 cases were litigated to judgment. As you can see, defendants were more than 7 times more likely to prevail in those kind of cases than were the plaintiffs. And the most common way for an employer to prevail was at summary judgment. That's an example of people having an idea of the risk level if they were not to settle a case and were to go through to litigate to judgment. It helps them understand, instead of just what the possibilities are for outcomes, to get a better handle on more what the probabilities.
So I've just explained one of the ways that data analytics is helpful to risk assessment during litigation. Well, data analytics could be helpful to risk assessment before litigation if the tools that I've described were more freely available or more accessible to the general public. Let me give you an example for comparison's sake. Let's say that you're a homeowner and you were thinking about selling your current home and moving to a different area of town and either upsizing or downsizing your home. You could, before talking to a realtor, you could hop on something like Zillow or Redfin and kind of get an idea of market prices. I realize the Zestimate or the estimates that are provided by these online tools are flawed, and I've linked to a video below where someone named Graham Stephan describes this in detail, what the weaknesses are of these online products. But one of the advantages to this is that online product, Zillow for example, is that if you click into the history of the house, you can find price that was sold at historically, and you can find things like tax value, things that you would potentially find on the property appraiser for the particular county. But instead of hopping on half a dozen separate county websites that may not be user-friendly at all, you can hop on this very easy to use platform and find the same information. Well, one day, hopefully, we'll have that kind of access to the general public. So going back to the example of Zillow, sure, a realtor could make much better sense of the market using Zillow or some other product than you can, because you're not a real estate professional. Same is true for Lex Machina and litigation. Sure, I would have an advantage over somebody who's not a litigator in evaluating the data, but a member of a public is going to have much more advantage over where they are now if they had access to the tool. It's very easy to use and it's very helpful. It's not hard to understand if there were keys and videos to explain how it works. And so somebody could make a risk assessment even before they contacted an attorney. They might nevertheless contact an attorney and get an idea, but they would not be starting from ground zero. But today, there really is not any kind of access for somebody who's curious about how court decisions ended up, because the access to court decisions is so limited. Even though technically these are public records, they're extremely difficult to get your hands on. You can't answer basic questions like how many employment litigation cases were decided in Duval County in 2018. That is not something that I can find out even using the tools that I have about court decisions or court outcomes, because information history is essentially kind of in a bureaucratic maze. So that is a problem, and once it is solved, and it, with the right resources devoted to it and the public demand, I feel like it, is a problem that could be overcome relatively quickly. The third way that data analytics helps with workplace dispute resolution is that data and insights from data help spur creativity. Let's give you an example. If more people had access to this information regarding case outcomes in employment litigation, it could be used in a number of different ways. Let's take the role of a human resources manager. For example, if a human resources manager wanted to offer a severance package to a departing employee, let's assume this departing employee was being terminated involuntarily, and there was some concern on the part of the HR manager that the person might contemplate a lawsuit against the company on any number of grounds. But if there was a concern that they might pursue, for example, a national origin discrimination claim against the company because there had been some complaints in the past from that employee, then the HR manager may try to structure a severance agreement that seeks a waiver of any claims that employee might bring in exchange for, some significant amount of money. Well, the HR manager, having access to a tool like Lex Machina, could potentially find out what the average recovery was for somebody in a national origin claim in the area. So they could look at all the potential outcomes and get a figure and say, okay, if we offer this figure and this employee takes this to an attorney and says, listen, I'm contemplating filing a suit against my employer, but they've offered this exit package, which has a significant sum of money, it may help that employer avoid a lawsuit, because hopefully they will have offered enough money that the attorney that was potentially going to represent the employee would look at it and say, this figure would be very hard to beat, given the risks that you'll face. And so, that attorney may recommend that the employee take the severance agreement rather than pursue a lawsuit against the company. Another potential use of this data is you could access the data to create checklists for harassment and anti-discrimination training by seeing, having a list of conduct that's inappropriate in the workplace and having a list that's developed from outcomes and say, okay, what are the trends in these cases of conduct by employees that's, either troublesome in the sense that it is routinely associated with adverse verdicts, or worse, it's routinely associated with high adverse judgments against employers. And they could say, wow, this is a real risk that we need to guard against, deploy more resources, training employees to not engage in that particular behavior, and you could discipline employees more severely for conduct that is inappropriate in that particular way. So that's another way that this information could be used to help avoid employment disputes. Can you think of some ways that information, data about employment litigation outcomes might be helpful to you in resolving or avoiding workplace disputes? If you got some ideas, please put those in the comments down below. I'd like to hear from you on that. Also, think information like this might be helpful about data and its impact on workplace disputes. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll be back with you in future videos. Thank you.